What if the union guarding 80,000 pilots worldwide is also fighting for 2 pilots always in the cockpit? While another organization is sending kids facing big challenges on life-changing Disney flights in one single magical day. Welcome back to Skyward, the podcast that brings you behind the scenes of the aviation and aerospace industries and the people who make it extraordinary. I'm your host, Pilot Mercedes, and today I'm thrilled to have Alivia Chanyi back again. First officer at Jazz, passionate mentorship advocate, Dreams Take Flight volunteer, and Special Olympics supporter. We're unpacking ALPA's mentorship program, those incredible once-in-a-lifetime magical Disney trips, and building stronger communities. If aviation advocacy and heartwarming impact inspire you, buckle up. This episode is meant for you.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seat and fasten your seatbelts. Thank you.
Alivia, thank you so much for coming on today. It's wonderful to have you back.
Yes, so great to be here. I'm super excited.
So if anybody wants to know a little bit more about her backstory and stuff like that, you can look at the previous episode. We're going to dive right in here with ALPA. How did you get involved with ALPA, and what is it all about?
Yeah, awesome question. So ALPA stands for the Airline Pilots Association, and so it is the biggest union that represents airline pilots around the world. And so to answer your question, I first got involved with ALPA, and I mean, even in our previous episode, like we were saying that until you know about something, there's no other way to know about it, right? Simply speaking. And so, ALPA was something that I guess I'd heard about in passing previously, but it wasn't really until I was actually hired at my company that I first really learned about ALPA and all the different things.
Really?
And which is so interesting because a little bit of, I'm going to try to explain it the best way that I can, but there's a lot of most airline carriers are represented by ALPA. The pilots are represented by ALPA because it is the Airline Pilot Association. And so the thing when you're first hired, I guess, by an organization where the ALPA is the union that represents the pilots. When you're hired as a pilot by that company, you're also now immediately an ALPA member,
right?
And so so you start paying dues right away, and it's like, well, what does that actually mean? Like, what kind of initiatives does this organization promote, and what are they doing? And so that was something that I learned slowly, I guess, over the first few months that I started working at my company. and one of the biggest things that I can say, the overall arcing idea from my experience and the way that I understand it is just advocating for the pilot group and whatever. And there's a lot of different things that can mean, like safety, lifestyle, and working conditions, that kind of thing. And also the one that I'm involved in, which is the education mentorship kind of support side of it. So there's a lot of great things that they do. It was founded in 1931, and it promotes the safety of pilots. And there's over 80,000 pilots represented, and 42 different pilot groups represented by this union. And so it's great to see that a lot of people or a lot of carriers, I guess, their pilot associations choose to be represented by this union because it is so well known. So that is, that's, I guess, kind of an overview.
So then how does it advocate for aviation safety and security on behalf of its members and the traveling public?
Yeah, absolutely great question. And I like that you kind of emphasize the traveling public too, because
it is both, right?
Both. As soon as people step on board the aircraft, they're entrusting the pilots and the cabin crew and inherently and or indirectly the air traffic controllers and the maintenance and the ground crew. All these different things go into it, but ALPA obviously works through the pilots and through the flight deck. And one of the things that is most kind of well known is the resources that are provided by ALPA. And there's different things like the pilot to pilot support. So we talked about this last episode too. It's great to have a mentor, someone to support you with advice, where they were recently in your position, so they're able to give relevant and accurate information to you when you're asking and needing that kind of help. And then another thing that ALPA is advocating for is a minimum 2 crew in the flight deck. So that's a way that we maintain safety, and by having 2 people there. And so I I wouldn't say I'm well versed in that subject. I stay up to date as kind of an ALPA member. And so I don't know if I'll speak directly on that issue. But that is something that ALPA advocates very strongly for. And so I guess to give a personal example behind that is when we go into the simulator for simulator training, one of the things that they do is they'll isolate the mics and then talk to one of the pilots in the simulator when you're going for recurrent training. They'll say, we want you to simulate that you're unconscious or
Oh,
experiencing
really?
some
I
kind
did
of
not
something.
know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was and the instructors are so great about it. I remember one of the first times when I was in the sim in my initial training, like he wrote on like the piece of paper to me, like after the 80 knots call on takeoff, simulate that you're like, don't respond. So you're simulating that you're unconscious or experiencing some kind of medical episode. And then he writes like a big, like smiley, grinning, goofy face on it too. So it was really funny. And then, you just have to kind of pretend, and you see the panic, that moment of panic in that other person's eyes when they realize that, like, oh no, I've got to do this all by myself.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's like, when we go into simulator training, we simulate real like emergencies, and we practice for emergencies, and they're incredibly challenging. Like, one engine is failing, and you have the other one, and now you got to work through all of these different factors like takeoff and the speed, and there's a whole plane of passengers sitting behind you, and there's air traffic control, and there's other planes in the sky, and now you're the only one that's handling all those factors.
Mhm.
And so, sorry, I'm gonna take a drink.
No worries.
But and so, yeah, there's that. And I mean, I felt at that moment of panic where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this by myself. And all of the things that you're used to, like someone supporting you with, are now everything's kind of on you. And so that is, I would say, like one of the most challenging exercises that we do in the simulator, even after all these years of, doing simulator training every 6 months. So I think that is more of a personal kind of story, but
Mhm.
I think it's, I'm not biased in the fact that I'm a pilot, but I'm also support, I guess, recognizing the importance of this issue, because it takes a lot to fly a plane, as you and I both know, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it. So the way to maintain, I think, safety and security amongst the public, that's one of the things that ALPA itself is kind of advocating for.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of people, like myself before talking to you about this topic, don't know about the
Yeah.
fact that ALPA has a lot of resources for its pilots. So, what does it provide for career development, leadership, and community building among its members?
Yeah, great question. And so a lot of the outreach events, like we talked about last episode, that a lot of these organizations go to, ALPA goes to a lot of those events as well to promote this idea. So like last year we went to like the London Air Show, the Girls Can Fly Day in Waterloo, and it's really just a way for people that have never heard about ALPA to come up and hear about what we do and how we advocate for pilot groups. And so there's a few different ways that ALPA does that. And community, I would say, among the pilots really is that pilot to pilot mentorship program, that or a support program that we do, which I talked about kind of in the last question. And so, there's a lot of pilots that I've known who have been mentors for me that have been involved in that program, and they're able to just I guess there's another pilot that you can lean on who's lived through your experience, and it's not usually aviation related. It's like, how do I now manage a family, and how do I manage eating well and being healthy, and so to have someone who has been there and knows how to kind of give accurate and relevant advice and information, that's one of the ways that the program supports the pilot group. And the way that I am involved in ALPA, if I can kind of lean into that story, is obviously I've only been an ALPA member for the last 2.5 years, so I don't have a ton of experience in a lot of the other realms. It's just been isolated for me towards the education committee, and so I think, this is also an interesting idea of imposter syndrome, I guess, as we know too. But I was like 5 months into the job, so I'd only been an ALPA member for about 5 months. And then one of the CRM instructors who taught my crew resource management in the first week of company line and dock was the person that reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be involved with ALPA. And so it was interesting because, I was like, I'm a person who is like, if there's an opportunity that sounds exciting, I'm like, yes. And then that was also a great project, kind of a research project for me to know more about how I'm supported as a pilot myself, I guess, through ALPA, and the different benefits. And so he's like asked if I wanted to be a part of the education committee, and that was like, right up my alley.
Yeah, exactly.
Because largely, yeah, that is largely the kind of work that I like to do, both within aviation and outside as well. And so we got started right away. They had already, and so the education committee is very prominent within the US side of ALPA, but it was not very prominent in Canada. And when I say not prominent, I mean it actually didn't exist.
Wow.
And so this, exactly. So this, one of my friends now, I would consider him a friend. So when he reached out, he was kind of the one that was like wanting to bring this to Canada. And so I think that there was like maybe three other pilots that he reached out to, like me being one of them, where he asked if we would kind of help him with this mission. And so it was like, I was very almost, I was excited, very, very excited, but I was like, me?
Yeah.
Because I'd only been doing this for 5 months, but later upon reflection, and now that I've been doing it for about 2 years, like he was saying that we need people who have very relevant and recent experience, going through like being a student and that kind of thing, who can really relate to the student pilot experience, and then what that means to then also be an ALPA member, because one of the things that when we do our well, I guess I'll back up. So we started doing presentations, and so we started with the University of Waterloo, and then we also had someone out, starting at Mount Allison Royal University, out in Calgary.
Okay.
So yeah, so it really started with those two schools, and so me and this other pilot, our first presentation was at the University of Waterloo, and it was day in the life. So it is very like introductory, easy to understand. But I mean, I didn't understand what day in the life of an airline pilot looked like until I actually had to live my first day as an airline pilot. And
That's very
I had
true.
a lot of support and mentorship to kind of have an idea, but I would have loved to have a presentation or a resource or even people to reach out to say like, what does that look like? And so
Yeah.
we walked them through what is a pairing? How, like, a pairing is like a sequence of days of work, and and so it's more complex, I guess, than that. But like, what is a pairing and how long, and when you pick your plane, like the plane that you pick determines what kind of flying that you do, from the regional jets all the way up, sorry, to like the long haul,
Right.
the rows that you do. And then that also impacts lifestyle, how many days off a month that you have. And then what you do on your layovers, how easy it is to eat and to maintain your health. We talk about that. And then we also talk about, sorry, I'm
Go
losing
for
my
it.
voice here. I've been
It's a lot of talking. It's a great topic, though.
means a lot to me. I was at a volunteering event like on yesterday too, so I feel like I'm still losing my voice a little bit. But yeah, it's all good stuff. It's all fun stuff that I love doing. So anyway, so back to so it's just a really great presentation to talk about like what a pairing is, and we take like old pairings and like the actual like and it has details of like, this is where you're going. This is the time that you get to get to the airport at. Here's your first leg. Here's where you end. And then you're going to come back here and you're going to go there. This is where you're staying for the night. Here's the hotel. And then it's like, when you first look at like what a pairing looks like, you're like, what am I looking at?
I've probably
and
been
so
pretty confused myself.
yeah. So I was already like hired and about to start my first pairing, and I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And so like, it's amazing that these students now have this resource where they have pilots and come to explain to them step by step what a pairing looks like, so that they're not going to go through that experience of, when they look at a pairing, they're going to be comfortable and confident to know that I had this resource provided to me all these years ago. And so it's a really incredible thing that we do, and then we always finish up with kind of a question and answer session, which is always phenomenal, and then we finish with a networking session because I had I knew one of my hometown friends, his dad is a pilot,
Oh,
and
wow.
when like in our first episode we talked about this, he came into the careers
That's
class
true.
and did the presentation. That was the first kind of I guess up close example or connection that I had with aviation. And so I was lucky enough to have that connection. But for people, like there's some people who are like, I've never met an airline pilot before. And right. And it's like, well, understandably, yeah, because it's hard to get access to them. And it seems like, well, why is it hard to get access to them? Because if that's a career that you want to take, then those are the people that you should be learning from. And so that's kind of I guess the mission that we have as the education committee, to bring that information right to them in a way that is accessible and easy to learn. And one of the pitches, or when I start my presentation, I guess one of the ways that I lead it off with is saying that with a personal example, I guess, is to say that in Canada specifically, you, like what I did, is can go through a pathway program right from flight training and join an airline where you're all of a sudden an immediate ALPA member without really knowing what that means. You're paying dues without understanding where your dues are
It's
going,
quite
and you
overwhelming
have all
from the
these.
sounds of it.
It is, and I think if that's the first understanding or contact you have with that kind of information, it's like it shouldn't be overwhelming. It should be kind of embracing and comforting to know that you're surrounded by all these resources. And so that is the goal that we aim to take, because we recognize in Canada specifically that people can become an airline pilot as soon as they're done flight training, which is not common, but is becoming more commonplace. And especially, that is less of an option in the United States, and it is very much an option in Canada. And so he thought it was very, like the person that reached out to me, he thought it was very relevant that this is something that we talk about in Canada because of kind of the way that the pathway programs work right now.
Yeah. Well, it's really amazing
Yeah.
that you've been able to join these kind of initiatives and be able to change and lead the way for others coming behind you and give them the information that you did not have starting off, so
Yes.
that they are not so shocked or concerned going into their very first job. Well, that's really
Mhm.
amazing. Thank you so much for doing so and
Yes.
saying yes, even if you
Yeah.
felt that you didn't know yourself what you were getting yourself into.
Yeah, I was like, am I really the right person that you're asking me about this to do this? Yeah, like I said, it's you don't know when you have relevant. It's hard you can see someone else as being a good mentor, but it's hard to recognize ourselves that we can be mentors and recognize all the skills and experience we have ourselves to share. So, yeah, it was a really great learning opportunity and self-reflection moment for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And now looking ahead with ALPA, you've kind of touched on it here and there, just focusing on training standards, technology advancements, and work issues or safety enhancements. What is ALPA looking at for the future?
Yeah, great question, and that's something that I kind of brought up with the two crew kind of initiative that ALPA is looking to take. There's obviously incredible advancements that are being made in technology, but the stance from my perspective that ALPA looks to take is always maintaining safety as the highest priority and standard amongst every airline pilot, all the way from the pilots all the way through the manufacturers, right? So that's something that I see personally as a focal point. There's also different things that we work on, like fatigue regulations, recognizing that our pilots fly across several different time zones, and their days in different time zones than where they ended, and looking at, if someone starts in Calgary, well, maybe they shouldn't do an 8 a.m. sim session in Toronto. And so looking at that, just making sure that there's like a quality of life balance matched with safe working conditions, I would say. And then again, just to make sure that the proper support and resources are provided so that our pilots can operate at the highest level of safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so
Hmm.
much for highlighting ALPA. We're going to move into Dreams Take Flight. So, For anyone who's
Yeah.
unfamiliar, could you share what the core mission for Dreams Take Flight is, and how does it use aviation to create magical and life-changing experiences for children facing various challenges?
Yeah, absolutely great question. And this is something I'm a newer member of Dreams Take Flight, but I'm so passionate about their mission, which is something I guess we'll get into later in the episode of why that is.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, so and I took this actually right from the website that I wanted to read just verbatim. And again, go to the Dreams Take Flight website.
No worries.
But it says when they land back home, the idea is yes in their thoughts. Their minds are stretched to new dimensions. They see new possibilities, and they have new memories to prove for a lifetime. And so, one of the things that Dreams Take Flight does, and there's many chapters like in all across Canada, like Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Halifax, Montreal, and so they all work towards the same mission, which is to give kids kind of the chance of a lifetime um, to kind of see past the challenges and the barriers that they're facing. And we take the Dreams Take Flight takes them down to Disney World or Disneyland for the day to just really be a kid and
Yeah.
to see the magic. Yeah, see the magic and be surrounded by other kids their age and just forget about all of the challenges or barriers that might be up against them and just see I guess the possibilities that await for them and I guess leave them with a new perspective, thinking, there's a whole other world out there, and there's so much. I guess there's so much good to life, and to have that perspective and have an organization that, you know, oh my gosh, I'm losing my
No,
voice.
it's all good.
To know that there's an organization out there that, and not just one, but this one specifically that wants to make sure that there's a level of inclusivity and there's a level of belonging and involvement where we recognize that there's an importance here to make sure that every kid, no matter what kind of challenge that they're facing, that they also get to have experiences of just enjoying the joy of childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite the intensive day. If I understand correctly, they leave really early in the morning and fly from Canada all the way down to Florida, which is already a decent flight, have a full day in Disney World, and then fly all the way back late at night and have a day of dreams, basically, to your point.
Yes.
And what is Air Canada's role in this whole experience for them?
Yeah. So, and again, speaking from experience and just recently being involved with the organization, I'll speak to what I do know. But
Mhm.
obviously, it is an incredible thing that Air Canada. It all started with a DC-9 that they flew all these kids down to Walt Disney World. But then now, in previous years, they take a 787 or a 777, like an incredibly like one of the biggest aircraft that there is. They fill it with kids and they fill it with balloons and streamers
Oh.
and all these. Yeah, it's incredible to they all posted on their Instagram page too. So if anyone wants to follow along with any of the different chapters, all the flight attendants are wearing bunny ears and
Oh, that's so
and they decorate.
special.
It's so special, and they're like blowing bubbles and just really creating this magical moment on this Air Canada aircraft that they bring down for the day, and they supply with the pilots and the flight attendants needed for the safe operation, obviously, of the aircraft. And they bring the plane down for the day. They get a big picture in front of the plane, and then obviously, you said later that night they all get back on the plane and head back home. So it is obviously, like you said, an intensive day, and it's so awesome to see that Air Canada obviously has such a huge role in making that happen for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you have a specific role in this, but what goes into planning a one-day dream flight for these kids, from selecting the children to who gets to coordinate with the volunteers and the airline logistics? Can you share a little bit what goes into that kind of planning? Because I'm sure it's extensive.
It is very extensive, and honestly, it goes far beyond me even to know exactly everything that goes into it. And so, but I do know that every month that we have a chapter meeting, and so we go and we talk about ways that, because it is 100% volunteer driven, it's an all expense paid trip for these kids. So there's a place where this money has to come from. And so it comes from a lot of fundraising, and there's different events that Dreams Take Flight plans throughout the year, like suitcase socials and different ways. And there's a lot of different events that even if people want to be involved, to keep an eye on those different events that they can go and be involved with that way if they can't be a part of the actual flight itself.
Right.
And so those are good ways. And we have a meeting next week, I think it is. Like, we have a monthly meeting where we all just get to have updates on everything that's going on within the chapter. And sorry,
A lot of talking.
It's a lot of talking, yes, it is, but and then there's so much logistic planning that goes on, and it's so great to see so many dedicated volunteers that even though it's this one day flight, one of the days of the 365 in the calendar year, that there are so many dedicated volunteers that take so much time throughout the year to make sure that this event can run smoothly for these kids. And so there's so many behind the scenes actions that happen, and it's great. It's so great to see. And so the first kind of involvement that I had with Dreams Take Flight was as a volunteer in the ground operation. So I was up at like Toronto Pearson Airport 3 a.m. and just getting everything set up. They blew up this huge Mickey Mouse, which was so fun.
That's so cute.
It was so fun. It was so fun. And then we set up like a volunteer station. And so when the kids came in, they got all of their their provided kind of outfit. And so it was like Dreams Take Flight, and they had a backpack, and it was so they're provided with that, and then they come in and they're assigned to the different groups. And I think there was something like 30 groups or something when I was helping organize. So each group has a chaperone and then one or two group leaders. And so with the ground operations, the morning of, you were welcoming the kids from their drop off at the kind of the departures level of the airport, and then bringing them to the area that we had designated for the Dreams Take Flight event. And then as a ground volunteer, we got everything kind of set up for them ahead of time. And so then when they got there, we would take the kid and kind of walk them down the aisle and take them to the different groups so they could meet their group leader and their chaperone and all the other kids that were going to be in their group. And so and it was awesome to see all of the volunteers, the group leaders and the chaperones that have been doing the event for a number of years now, and just like chipper, bright-eyed, 3 a.m. and ready to just really make such an incredible experience for these kids. So that's the way that I was involved last year. And then and then just being involved with the monthly meetings and things like that. So I'm very passionate, I guess, about this organization, and so impressed, I guess, by the initiative that they take on to create such a magical day for these kids who otherwise face a lot of different social and physical and different challenges like that. So it's there's a lot that goes into it, but I think if you went to any of the volunteers, they would say without any kind of hesitation that it's worth it.
So what got you into Dreams Take Flight? What was your first introduction to it, and why did you think that was something that I wanted to be part of, a bigger picture, a bigger dream?
I love that you asked this question. Because I think there's a few different parts to it. So one of my mentors from the Northern Lights Aero Foundation, her son has Down syndrome, and my brother has Down syndrome. And when we were matched through the mentorship program, that was not actually something that they knew. So it was like kind of like fate, I guess. I don't know.
Wow, that is amazing.
That was something. Yeah, it's obviously a huge part of both of our lives. And so she was involved with Dreams Take Flight. And then at my company, there's like one of the girls in the office, she is also involved in Dream Take Flight. So there's a lot of posters everywhere all the time of different ways to get involved with these different events. And so I first heard about it, I guess, really through those two people. And so that's when so like I said, my brother has Down syndrome. And so as a sister, and I guess as a family member, I recognize how many organizations support people with facing different challenges, and how much of an impact that they have in creating such a, I guess, more of a full life for them, and providing alternate opportunities that they might not have otherwise had access to, I guess. And so that is something that when she said, there's this organization that does this for so many kids. I just thought that was honestly, I got chills because it was, yeah, I just think it's so impressive that people 100% volunteer driven organization that is like pays and for a fully funded trip for all these kids to go down and just be a kid and just to be at Disney. Like that is, it would just really, it really hit home for me, obviously because of my personal connection with my brother. And so to be a part of that as, I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, it's an opportunity that these kids wouldn't have otherwise due to personal circumstances, due to health. So the fact that all these volunteers and donations are willing to give these kids a once in a lifetime, possibly for once in a lifetime, depending on their situation and health situation is just such a magical thing for the kid, but also for the families and the parents that are involved in their
Yes.
journey. So it's truly a wonderful organization, a wonderful thing that they're doing for these kids.
Hmm.
How can people get
Absolutely.
involved if they're seeing the vision and hearing your story and really want to get involved with this amazing day? How can they start that journey?
Yeah, awesome question. And it really all starts through, I guess, word of mouth, but also leading back to the website because there are obviously, like I said, there are so many different chapters across Canada. So knowing which one that you would like to be a part of, and then there's contacts on there of how to be involved, and then there's the volunteer sign up forms and how to sign up for the email so that you can be kind of notified when there's different meetings and that kinds of thing. So really starting out with finding the chapter that is closest to you, and then going from there and attending monthly meetings. And then, like I said, there's so many different parts and puzzles and or pieces that go into the actual day itself. And so there's countless ways to be involved, whether it's with the events that go to fundraise the event throughout the year, or being involved as a member and ground. I was helping out with the morning, but there was also this massive team that helped with the kids getting off the plane and getting back to their families. And then there's also all of the group leaders and the chaperones that went on the day of. So there's so many different ways to be involved, and it really I would say personally that it all really starts through the website.
Well, that's a great place to start for sure. And this kind of bridges us
Uh-huh.
into the Special Olympics. What is your involvement with the Special Olympics?
Yeah. So, and obviously, like I said, this is something that really is personal to me because so it's just me and my brother, just him and I, and so and he's 4 years older than me, and so growing up, um, I don't it was I think as a family, we all felt so grateful that, Jarrett was supported by so many great friends and organizations. And then it all really started with, the London Down Syndrome Association. So there was, an organization that I started volunteering with that supported, and raised money for, programs for children with, Down syndrome in the London area. And so whether that was cooking classes or speech classes or movement classes or summer camps or there was so many things that he was involved with growing up, and they held like dinners and galas every fall, and so that was and then that was kind of how we bridged into Special Olympics. And so, um, Jarrett is like he loves playing basketball and volleyball, and he's like, I'm always just so surprised when he starts to do something like how good he is at it without like with very little like difficulty.
Oh,
Um,
envious.
it's honestly like yeah, like I'm like not being able to do something, and then he's like, let me try, and then it's like, oh, okay. So I think so Special Olympics again, from my experience, um, is an organization that it looks to support the kind of the physical or the healthy living side of people with different special needs. And so I found some history on the website, and I knew of this, but I think it's important to kind of share just for anybody that's listening. But the whole movement started in the first event was held in Chicago in 1968. So like this has been going on for a long time, and the competition was inspired by Canadian research, which was very interesting. So there was a Canadian researcher at the actually in Toronto, and who studied at the University of Toronto, and he found that there was different. He was studying the effects of regular exercise and fitness levels within children who have intellectual disabilities, and so finding ways that they can be involved with sport in ways that were catered to them. And so it's just been really great to see how I guess that has progressed, and especially on a personal level. Jarrett has like such a full week, and like there's so many more activities beyond even the things that he does, which is so incredible. And like he goes and they play like darts at the Legion, and then there's like different golf tournaments, and he plays basketball every Thursday night, and he
Oh,
plays
goodness.
cornhole on Tuesdays. And even this weekend, he's going to play a basketball tournament against another Special Olympics team in Woodstock. So there's such a need for it, and it's such a great community for them to have to be able to hang out together and have a reason to. I mean, like he's busy all the time, which is so incredible to see. Like, and there's so many skills and that he is learning, and it's just really promoting the idea of healthy living. And I just yeah, it's just great to how much support there is for making sure that these individuals have the same access to opportunities and can kind of live a full and balanced and healthy life, which is so incredible. And so and there's a lot of support for it too. And I mean, this is a Canadian thing, obviously, but like Tim Hortons, they have their Smile Cookie campaigns.
Oh, wow.
And so, have you heard of that? The Smile Cookies?
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
Smile Cookies.
Absolutely. They have their Smile Cookie campaign, and then it ends up going throughout our work. So,
oh, good. Okay. So in town, so each, I guess, like Tim Hortons store can choose where the money goes. And so last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I think even last year, for the past few years, a lot of the stores in my town have chosen for their money to go towards Special Olympics for their
wow.
like in the local. And so I can't remember, Jarrett went and he was part of the big check ceremony, and he was like standing out holding this big check, but it was something like, I want to go but I don't know I can't remember the exact number, but my instinct is telling me that it was something like $20,000 that went straight into local Special Olympics organizations and programs, which is fantastic, obviously, because Jared directly benefits from those. And so, and I don't know if you've seen like their operation when the Smile Cookie Week goes on.
I have
but like
never seen. I don't know anything.
Well, I like walking into the Tim Hortons, like they like set aside like a whole side of their restaurant just to make these Smile Cookies, and there's people like handing trays out
Wow.
like all the time, and then what was so great was that there were a few times Jarrett and I went and actually volunteered to help out make these Smile Cookies, which was so fun because I've been eating Smile Cookies since I was like 10, and now I'm the one putting the blue dots and the pink smile on it, which was so fun. And so I can't remember how we were there for a few hours just putting Smile Cookies together, and they were going out the window like that, like it was a constant. And what was great to see was that when we were done our shift, that there was people ready there to do their next shift too. And so to see how much support there was specifically for Special Olympics in town the past few years has been just so great. And it's I just think it's, obviously the money has to come from somewhere, just as we talked about, from all the other organizations. But to see that there's no lack of supply is just really inspiring.
Absolutely.
It really is.
How do people get involved if they want to join this amazing Special Olympics movement? To put in one way.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a website, but I think this is more local, I guess. There's a lot, and it's funny because there's so many different kind of facets of Special Olympics. And so I actually know like a Special Olympic athlete that is going out to a tournament in Medicine Hat in August.
Oh, wow.
So there's so he qualified in like provincials, I think, and now he's going all the way out to Calgary to compete. So there's obviously volunteers that are needed to support the tournament. So that's one way to be involved. And then right down to all the different programs that obviously there's a lot of them. There's volunteers support each program. And so for a few years, I was helping out with the basketball team. Now, yeah, so I was helping out like run drills and stuff with Jarrett when he was playing basketball, which was so fun on Thursday nights. And so there's the individual program events that happen each night of the week that there's obviously volunteer help needed to kind of run those events. And then and if there's like obviously this was quite niche, but like Tim Hortons was running their Smile Cooking campaign and supporting Special Olympics. Now, if there's other things that are like being supported, if Special Olympics is being supported in other ways, those are great ways to reach out and volunteer in that way. So it really is just about like being involved, I guess, watching for opportunities. And I mean, when you look for them, I think it's just such a large organization that you will find opportunity to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've highlighted some pretty amazing organizations from ALPA to Dreams Take Flight, and now Special Olympics. What would you encourage anyone who's listening to this episode? What would you want them to walk away with?
I think, in this day and age, it's very easy to just kind of be locked into your own world and to not recognize that there is so much more life happening outside. And so, and that when we're all human, right? It's very easy to see the things that divide us, but what's, I would say, more beneficial and more fulfilling as a person is to see all the ways that we are related and all connected to each other, and all the ways that we are similar, because then we see someone as, a friend rather than someone who might have is different than us. And they're only different than us because that's the way that we choose to define them. If we choose to see them, I would rather see someone as a person who also wants to feel involved, also wants to be involved in the community, right? And so I would just say that there is always good where you choose to look for it. And there is always, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And so I think just to leave it at that point and saying that if you want to get involved, please do, because there's so much more to life than just life itself. I guess your individual life itself. I think that life is very fulfilling when we can choose to fill it with initiatives that leave our life in the world better than when we found it.
I think that is the best way you could have summed that up. Thank you so much for coming on again. It is truly wonderful to have you, and you bring so much insight and heart into all of these organizations and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I again, I'm so thankful that I got to be your first guest on your podcast, but now to also come back and talk about so many things that I'm obviously so passionate about. And obviously, like you said, to shed some light on all these different organizations that people might have not otherwise heard about that are doing obviously incredible things in the community. So I really appreciate you having me, giving me the time to talk about it.
There's appreciation going all around. Thank you so much. And I'm sure it won't be the last time that you'll come on.
Oh, every time I'll be waiting. So that sounds good. I'm so excited and so inspired by the growth that you've had in recent episodes, and just that you've decided to take on this mission where you look to share people's stories. And even on that last point that I was saying, all the ways that we're connected, and all the. So I just really appreciate everything that you're doing. I'm so proud and excited for you for all the things that you're doing. And I'm really happy.
I truly appreciate you, and thank you so much for your words of encouragement and your support from behind the scenes. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you and for me, and where this all takes us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
And that's a wrap on this powerful Skyward conversation. Massive thanks to Olivia Chanyi for opening up about ALPA's work for pilot safety and 2 crew standards. The mentorship that lifts new pilots to new heights. The pure magic of Dreams Take Flight, turning tough days into Disney dreams. And the joy of Special Olympics brings through community and sport. If these stories of pilots helping each other and giving back moved you, do 3 quick things for me right now. 1. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can catch every episode. 2. Drop a comment about what hit home for you the most, or which organization you're going to look into first. And 3. Share this with a fellow pilot, aspiring aviator, or anyone who needs to hear this for extra inspiration. Thank you so much for listening. Fly high, dream big, and I'll see you on the next episode.